All right, everybody, welcome back. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing The Colorado Kid by Stephen King. We've got two versions here. Got the little mass market paperback and the trade paperback with different covers. Now, this came out in 2005. So let's start by reviewing the covers first. Well, before we do that, a little bit of a history on this series of book reviews. I dedicated myself a couple years ago to reread every single Stephen King novel in order of publication and leave a review on YouTube. We're to The Colorado Kid now. So we're to 2005. That's when these books came out. Well, this book came out 2005. So we're almost there. Of the 90 or some odd books that he's written, I've reviewed about 70 of them. So we're getting towards the end, folks. Let's talk about The Colorado Kid. Not only did I read this recently, but I listened to it on audible.com. The voice narrator was Jeffrey Duman. I think that's the guy's name, Jeffrey Duman. He did a really good job. As I was listening to the narration, I followed along in the book, and everything seemed to go smoothly. So we'll give him an A+ for the narration. Now let's take a look at the covers, because when we review Stephen King books, we also review the covers, because I love book illustration and I love graphic design. So let's take a look at these two covers. So these were done by Hard Case Crime. That's the publisher. You can see their little logo there at the top, Hard Case Crime. And we're going to talk a little bit about Hard Case Crime here in a second. So they want to do those pulp fiction type looking covers, and I think both of these covers do a great job of it. This was the first one that came out. It was done by an artist named Glenn Orbick. He does a lot of book covers. This one was done by Paul Mann. Which one do we like better? It's a good question. I think this one represents what happens in the book a lot more than this one. But this one is pretty damn striking. I'm going to give it a tie. Actually, I like this one a little bit better. But I'm going to give it a tie because this version that I'm holding up here also has a bunch of illustrations on the inside. I mean, about every other page is illustrated. I won't show them all to you, but there's some great illustrations in here. And done by various artists. I won't list them all. There's a whole shitload of them. So let's talk about Hard Case Crime. So these guys at Hard Case Crime, back in the early 2000s, they wanted to start a publishing company. And but they wanted all their books to be these pulpy, old-timey, like thrillers and mystery novels, kind of like Raymond Chandler or the Maltese Falcon or Donald Westlake, or even like Ian Fleming's James Bond. They wanted to have pretty girls on the covers and the paintings to just reminisce back to that old-timey era. And so they wanted to launch a publishing company called Hard Case Crime. So they did. And they were starting to get together some new authors that they could bring on, but they also wanted to reprint older authors like Lawrence Block, some of Michael Crichton's early work, a lot of this stuff. And then they said, well, we want to, we know Stephen King likes this type of stuff, so maybe we could get him to give us a blurb. Like maybe he could give us a little shout out on the covers of some of our books, because a lot of the authors we're going to be using are some of his favorites, and he might like to give us a little introduction or something. So they contacted Stephen King. And a few weeks went by and they didn't hear anything. And then Stephen King called back and he said, no, I'm not going to give you any blurbs or any forewords or introductions. I'm not going to do that. And they were like, oh, shit. He said, what I am going to do, I'm going to write you an entire novel. And they were like, the novel he turned into them was The Colorado Kid. So that's the story of how The Colorado Kid came into being as a hard case crime. One of their Hard Case Crime. Now, we know that Stephen King's also done several other books for Hard Case Crime. He did Joyland for Hard Case Crime. And he also just recently did the book Later for Hard Case Crime. So, Stephen King now has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 3 books as I count them. 1, 2, 3 books. Yes, 3 books with Hard Case Crime. Let's talk about The Colorado Kid. It's going to be a short review. It's a short book. It's basically about 2 old men and a young woman named Stephanie who are sort of noodling away at this unsolved mystery that happened on their island of Haven. And the unsolved mystery is there was a body that was found dead. I mean, and they started to call him the Colorado Kid. The dead guy they just nicknamed the Colorado Kid. They couldn't solve the crime. They just found him dead, propped up against a trash can, staring endlessly out to sea. And then these 3 people tried to sleuth out over time who he was, why he was there in Haven, where he came from, how he died, who killed him, all of those things. So that's the setup. And they're just amateur sleuths. Like the cops gave up on the death a long time ago. It's just one of those unsolved mysteries, right? It's one of those things that goes into the vault. We didn't solve it. Maybe 20 years later, somebody will solve it. Who knows? Who cares? Dude was dead. Whatever. But they kind of are just obsessed with this dead body, and they just, like these 2 old men, they want to figure it out. And they got their friend Stephanie, the young girl, who they kind of bring into this whole thing. And the theme, I mean, so that's basically the setup, and I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but I will tell you some of the themes. This book is more than a hard-boiled mystery novel, although it has some of those elements. This is more a metaphor on just the randomness of life. Like, you know, it doesn't concern itself with the who. Like, in the end, it doesn't really concern itself with the who, where, why, or what of the mystery. It's the fact that the mystery just exists. That's the important part. The mystery just exists. The randomness of life. Like the plane that crashes versus the one that didn't. Or the missing child in the woods that stays missing, whereas some children are found. The punch that kills a guy, the one punch that kills a guy. Meanwhile, another guy can get shot 11 times and live. You know, it's the survivors versus the non-survivors, and just the randomness of life and how there is no rhyme or reason to any of it. You know, the woman that says yes to you and becomes your wife. Meanwhile, the 100 that didn't. The murders that get solved and the murders that don't get solved, which is what they're dealing with here, is an unsolved murder. How come everything is so just arbitrarily? It's like we're on a spinning globe just floating through the universe, and just random stuff is happening. And some people survive it, some people don't. Some people live happily, some people don't. And you just never know at what point in time your number's going to get called. Some people live to 5 years old. Some people live to 105 years old. That's kind of the theme of this book. And I think it's an important theme. It's the mystery just is. That's the thing. It's a mystery novel. The solving of it or the not solving it isn't the important thing. It's the fact that there's a mystery there. That's the important thing. So anyway, that's my review. I think it's pretty good. It's not one of my favorite things that Stephen King has written. Although it is, Stephen King's my guy. I love everything he does. I mean, he's my favorite author of all time. I is still going to give this one a pretty high review. I'm going to give this, because I like the way it ended. I actually really like, much like the Dark Tower ending, that gets a lot of criticism. This book also gets a lot of criticism for its ending, and I absolutely liked it. I just thought it was one of those genius stories that only Stephen King could come up with, and one of those endings that's just like The Sopranos, that's just gonna make you go, what the fuck did I just see and watch and read? And I just like that kind of stuff. I really, really, really like the contemplation that comes after reading a book like this or watching a show like The Sopranos or The Dark Tower or any of those things. So I'm going to give this a solid 7.5 out of 10. And that's my Colorado Kid review.